I'm going to play for you this clip from a major television network. And warning to all those, you may have heard it before, it's disturbing.
But with her, I'm worried about like her mental well-being and her dilation. The minute she leaves my house, we have a dilation problem.
That is a concern. When you don't have that watchful eye, they tend to go back to old patterns.
I have woken Jazz out of a dead sleep and taken the dilator and put the lubrication on it and said, here, you take this and you put it in your vagina. If not, I will. But Jazz is bad, even when I'm home once a day. I would be so mad if she goes away to college and that thing seals up. I will wring her neck. Can you imagine?
This is a story about a biological male.
This entire discussion was beyond my technical ken.
So let me explain it. Let me say it for you as plainly and inoffensively as possible.
Be gentle, but all right.
I am not going to explain this to people in a way that will invite invective or aggression. I will just try and keep the language plain. This is the story about Jennings, a biological male who at the age of 3 was determined to be transgender by Jazz's family. Began social transition around 7, puberty blockers, hormone blockers. At the age of 17 as a minor, Jazz received a sex change operation. They refer to as bottom surgery. Typically, an adult male receives...
At what age?
17, as a minor. Typically, people receive what's called a penile inversion vaginoplasty if they're adults. But because Jazz underwent puberty blockers, Jazz did not develop any physical function in terms of sexual components. This resulted in severe complications and multiple surgeries where they had to take stomach lining to create the inside of what is a permanent wound in the pelvis of this young male. The purpose for which is so that a man who is attracted to Jazz can insert themselves for sexual gratification. After the surgery, because the wound tries to seal itself, you have to introduce what's called a dilator every day, which is a device that cranks the wound open with lubrication. This is the story of a mother on the Learning Channel, a major corporate cable channel, explaining how she wakes up her biologically male child in the middle of the night and says, stick this in your wound and crank it open or I will. And then goes on to say, if she leaves and that wound closes, I will wring her neck. Tell me this is not moral decay when on cable television, this, which I believe to be purely criminal child abuse, is celebrated. I see that and I just say, we have reached a severe state of moral decay.
It's it sounds like a psychosis.
Munchausen syndrome by proxy.
A collective psychosis. Mm-hmm. And the idea that it would be presented on any sort of viable commercial television outlet of some kind is staggering to me.
And Ron DeSantis hasn't filed any criminal charges against his family for what they've done. It's gotten to the point where, I'll phrase it this way. If it was 1990 and we heard a story about a parent who did this to their child, they'd probably be arrested, investigated. The child would be removed, given psychotherapy and some kind of help. This is to the point where not only there are people in this country who are mad at me right now for saying this. This woman says that she forces her child to do this. Her child clearly does not want to. That's why she has to wake up her child in the middle of the night and say, do it or I will, for a TV show. And instead of saying, maybe we should investigate because this sounds like abuse. This sounds like the child does not want to engage in this practice and the mother is making them do it and it could be potentially harmful. Why don't we get protective services or some kind of law enforcement to at least investigate? Not only are we not doing that, we're putting it on television, celebrating it, giving them commercials.
And selling ad time on it.
And their book.
It's Warner Brothers.
And Jazz has a book encouraging more children to engage in this.
Jazz is an adult now, which is why there's no protective custody thing going in. Now it's just, you would assume it's a consensual relationship between two consenting adults. Otherwise, Jazz would have filed a complaint.
Let me play this other clip because people are requesting I play this other clip. Here, we'll listen to this.
So, are you feeling like you wanted to start talking about... Are you okay?
I'm okay.
I'm going to cry. But
You know I can't get out of my head.
I know. Listen.
It just doesn't stop.
It's okay. Give me a hug. It's okay. I know what you're going through. We've been there before.
No, it still doesn't stop now. And I'm already going back to negative.
But the more you're talking about yourself, it gets harder. Mm-hmm. You're digging in and It's making you put a magnifying glass on what's already difficult as it is. So this is hard for you, I know, and we don't want to push you
I
anymore.
know I'm the one doing it. Like,
I know, you're your own worst enemy.
I feel kind of all over the place, and like my mind is very cluttered and not clear. And I really want to have that clarity. I really want to understand myself and be able to read my own soul and what I want. And it's just very challenging. And I think I'm kind of breaking down a little bit and spiraling into negativity.
I just want to feel like myself. Like, that's
Right.
it. I don't
Like the
care.
old Jazz?
All I want is to be happy and feel like me, and I don't feel like
What
me
is me?
ever.
So the interesting thing with this now is that Jazz, a biological male who was raised as a female and underwent surgery, is dating women. This to me is obvious moral corruption of our society in ways we've not seen in previous generations.
I'll tell you what it brings to mind for me. It brings to mind the statement from John Kenneth Galbraith. Raise your hand if you know who John Kenneth Galbraith was. He was an economist. He coined the term the affluent society, and he was also President Kennedy's ambassador to India. And he and Buckley used to have a kind of a relationship, sort of like Scalia and RBG, where you had these two people on different sides of the issues who would debate, and they were best friends. They would go skiing together, etc. But John Kenneth Galbraith said, I think around 1960, that America is the first country in the history of the world where more people are at risk of dying from having too much to eat than from having too little.
Oh, yeah.
And the choices and the decision making and the enterprise that you've just played are the choices and decisions and the enterprise of an elective society, where if you go around the world, or if you go into other neighborhoods in the United States where they don't have enough to eat, no one's doing this sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's important to note that this was something that boiled up over time, right? This was something that crept up to be at the point where we now talk about it as if it's a regular part of society. Jazz's show used to be on TLC. TLC also hosted 19 Kids and Counting, which were Jim Bob and Michelle Duggar, who were these homeschooling Christians, and they were sort of another view at an extreme family, because that's how TLC made money for years and years and years. They took people who lived in sort of unorthodox ways or not in a normal way and put them both on TV. And one of the sons-in-law, Derek Dillard, on Twitter, I think this was in like 2016, maybe 2014, said, Jazz is being abused. This is not real. There's only two genders and this is all terrible. And TLC said he can't appear on the show anymore. He is not allowed to be on this thing where theoretically he makes money because they sided with the gender ideology. And this was, close to a decade ago at this point. We have seen this coming for some time, and instead of intervening and saying like, well, let's at least have both opposing opinions on air and let people sort it out for themselves. I know you always say this, but people saw, well, this one makes more money, so we'll side with it. I don't even know if it does make more money. But there is when you look back, it's sort of dark to think that along the way we could have had rational discussions and we could have said, I don't know, maybe this is too far. Maybe there are some boundaries we're crossing. And instead we're like, no, we need to let people live as they live, even when you sacrifice a child body, basically.
When I saw Rachel Dolezal, she was the lady out in the Seattle area, I think, who,
transracial,
who became convinced that she identifies as an African-American person, and, took every step possible to further that idea, including changes in the way she presented herself and so on. But she got as far with it as securing the position, I think, of executive director of the local NAACP out there. Okay, she got to be in charge of an organization that advanced the interests of people of color, even though she herself was white. And when I saw that take place, I thought to myself, well, what should prohibit me from saying that from the age of 5, I have strongly identified as a Beatle? And I'm going to demand that all of you, anyone who comes into my presence and all of you who don't, shall now treat me as a Beatle. That starts with the checks, but that's not the end of it, right? Like,
Beatle
I
the musician,
self-identify.
not the bug.
The sixth Beatle.
Sixth?
I suppose. Well, there's the drummer, and then I guess you could say Epstein.
Original Paul. The first Paul was the.
Oh,
Are
yeah.
you the original
8
Paul?
I am the 6 millionth fifth Beatle is what I am. But again, this isn't happening. What you just played, the Jazz Jennings saga, isn't happening in places where people are scrounging just to have enough to eat.
Right.
These are the decisions, the elective decisions of an affluent society. And what's
Moral decay.
and it's just extraordinary to
Are
me.
you familiar with the rat hope experiment?
No.
Scientists put a bunch of rats in a space, limited space, unlimited resources, food and water, and then observed what they would do. And they broke down to the point where, like, they were huddling around each other, no longer engaging in normal rat behavior. One group started grooming themselves and did nothing else. Their behavior started to break down. They became aggressive. With a limited amount of space, they would all congregate in one small area.
Right.
The social breakdown resulted in like stopping eating and then dying. When they would take one of the rats from this place and put it back into a normal rat society, it would retain the social behaviors and spread them and then bring social decay. So that's very horrifying.
A behavioral sink, the rat utopia. I
Right.
think you may have said rat hope experiment,
sorry,
which is a different one.
The hope was a different one. That
Yeah,
was
where
the
they
rat
put them in
utopia.
water and make them swim, but it's the rat
Yeah,
utopia.
the rat hope one's scary too.
Yeah, when you give people unlimited food, how do you convince them not to eat too much?
Thanks for watching this clip from the Timcast IRL podcast. Hang out with us live Monday through Friday at 8 p.m. and become a member over at timcast.com for uncensored, members-only shows exclusive. Thanks for hanging out, and we'll see you all next time.